नमस्कार। ये अरुंधति जी का साहित्य अकादमी से पुरस्कृत काव्य संग्रह जो है उसकी एक कविता है, शीर्षक कविता ही है उस संग्रह की। मैं उस पूरी किताब को ही अनुवाद कर रहा हूँ, तो उसमें से एक कविता ये है जो आपके साथ मैं रख रहा हूँ। ये ड्राफ्ट ही है, इसी रूप में स्वीकार किया जाए। अरुंधति जी की रेंज को हिंदी पाठकों तक पहुँचाने की कोशिश है। जब ईश्वर एक यात्री है, कार्तिकेय या मुरुक मेरे हमनाम सुब्रमण्यम के बारे में आश्चर्यचकित होते हुए, ये कवित्री कहती हैं इस कविता के शीर्षक से पहले। जब ईश्वर एक यात्री है, उसकी पिछली यात्राओं से ईश्वर पर विश्वास करो। उसकी आवाज़ साबुत अनाज की तरह और बबूने के फूल सी, उसकी बुद्धिमत्ता नीम सी, उसका पसीनेदार मोरपंखी छायाओं में डूबता हुआ। उस पर विश्वास करो जो पार्क के बेंचों पर बैठता है शब्दहीन, बच्चों का क्रंदन सुनते हुए, गोधुली में धूमिल होता हुआ। मन मर्जी से रहित उसकी दृष्टि, उसका स्वामित्वपूर्ण हृदय। उसका विश्वास करो जिसने देखा है पर्याप्त क्रांतियाँ, वचन और शॉपिंग मॉल्स की व्यग्र रोशनी, अस्पतालों के कमरे, मैनिफेस्टो, कई धर्मशास्त्र, रक्त का लौहिक स्वाद, प्रेम के मध्य में महान गड्ढे भी। उसका विश्वास करो जिसे अब किसी से शिकवा नहीं है। उसका भाई, उसका पुरस्कार, उसके माता पिता, उनकी पक्षपात पूर्णता। उसका विश्वास करो जिसकी दौड़ है भागना, जिसकी यात्रा अभी शेष है, जो तरल उपज खड़ा है जानते हुए कि यह पेड़ है, जिसके होते हैं फल और उत्सव सूर्य के साथ। उसका विश्वास करो जो तुम्हें पहचानता है, शुभ प्रचुर युद्ध के घाव के साथ जीवित, और जो जानता है कि तुम कहाँ से आए हो। विश्वास करो ईश्वर का जो तैयार है विश्व को फिर से घुमाने के लिए, इस बार बिल्कुल बिना किसी कारण, केवल तुम्हारी आँखों से देखने के सिवा। जब ईश्वर एक यात्री है, जब ईश्वर एक यात्री है। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you, Dr. Dushyantji. May I now invite on stage Namita Gokhale, head of the jury and co-director, Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 Series Jaipur Literature Festival; Sanjoy Roy, jury member and MD, Teamwork Arts; our guest of honor, Lily Pandey, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Culture; fellow jury members, Ranjit, Hoskote and Sukrita Paul; Jaiprakash Sethia and Siddharth Sethia from Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia Foundation, and award winner Arundhathi Subramaniam. Can we have a round of applause for our eminent speakers today? May I now invite Sanjoy Roy to say a few words.
Lily Pandey ji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, ladies and gentlemen. 9 साल पहले जयप्रकाश सेठिया, सिद्धार्थ सेठिया हमारे पास इसी मंच पे आए थे, जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल पे, और हमें एक ये कहा कि क्या हम एक अवार्ड इंस्टीट्यूट कर सकते हैं उनके पूर्व पिताजी कन्हैयालाल सेठिया के नाम पे। तो हमने इंस्टेंटली कहा कि एब्सोल्युटली। और हमारा जो कलेक्टिव विज़न था कि नहीं, ये नहीं कि एक ही लैंग्वेज पे हम ये अवार्ड हम पेश करेंगे, पर अक्रॉस इंडिया we'll try and find some of the best poetry, some of the best poets, और उनके लिए ये मंच हम चाह रहे थे कि वो आए यहाँ पे, हमसे ये अवार्ड स्वीकार करें and take the words of poetry out beyond the walls of the Jaipur Literature Festival. जो खास करके हमें लगता है कि जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल में पोइट्री के लिए हमारे पास बहुत जगह है. आप लोगों ने शायद कल और फर्स्ट डे पे गुलजार साहब के सेशन पे आए थे. हर शाम को हमारा एक पोइट्री आवर नमिता जी प्रोग्राम करते रहते हैं और उसमें भी बहुत संख्या के लोग शामिल होते हैं. A lot of people come together because everybody, we think, loves poetry. So when we are told that poetry is dead or there's no space for publishing anymore in poetry, I have to quote yesterday's statistics of the maximum number of books that were sold in the bookstore yesterday was the poetry by Gulzar Saab. And absolutely, and we do believe that by providing platforms, इस तरीके से मंच provide करके, we do believe that poetry is not about being resurgent. Poetry is eternal. Poetry is about the truth. So we're delighted that with Jaiprakash ji, Siddharth ji and the Sethia Foundation, we're able to put this poetry award together every year. Thank you to our wonderful jury, Sukrita Paul and Ranjit Hoskote, Namita Gokhale, who spent hours together looking at the body of work of poets in India across languages. And every year our effort is, can we broaden that work? We've had some of the most amazing poets come and receive this. And we are absolutely honored, like I said in my press conference on the 23rd, that this year the award was to be conferred unanimously to Arundhathi Subramaniam, who we have taken across the world. एक चीज़ मैं बोल दूँ कि अरुंधति जी हमारे साथ ऑस्ट्रेलिया आए हैं, यूके आए, अलग अलग countries में गए, and everywhere the minute she starts reading her poetry, there's a connect between her, the world that she creates, and the wisdom that she imbibes in the words of her poetry. So Arundhati, congratulations. May I start by asking Namita Gokhale to say just a few words for the award, and before that we're going to play the audiovisual for the Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia Award. Thank you all for being part of this. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our absolute honor and privilege to collaborate with the Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia Award every year.
मेरी जन्मभूमि राजस्थान को नमन, मेरी मातृभाषा मायड़ भाषा राजस्थानी को नमन.
All of you to give the most resounding claps for Kanhaiyalal ji, Arvind ji, and for poets. Somebody once said poets are the unknown legislators of the world.
मेरे लिए ये एक बहुत बड़ा दिन है, पंजाबी में कहूँ तो बड़ा भागां वाला दिन है.
In our prayers are songs of love, dirges of woe and taranas of protest.
मैं बहुत खुश हूँ कि ये और मैं बहुत आभारी हूँ कि और ये बहुत अच्छी बात है कि एक परिवार ने एक कवि के नाम पे एक इतना बड़ा पुरस्कार, जो कि GLF पिछले 4 या 5 सालों से चला भी रहा है.
Sethia Saab, thank you very much for suggesting this, because it's very rare that a poetry award is given, and I think this is one way of popularizing poetry.
மிக முக்கியமான விருதாக என்னுடைய வாழ்க்கையில் நான் நினைக்கிறேன்.
The real poets do it very differently. It is a soft pill. You ingest it and then you realize the storm that's brewing up in your body.
Thank you so much, and this august company, and so good that
that you are here. It is particularly delightful to be presenting this award.
हमारी जो अपनी भाषाओं में हमारी अपनी कविता है उससे.
Because one of the things I am so inspired to see so many young people here, and it is the transformative power of reading. And a poem is a made thing.
I'm very happy and honored that such a distinguished gentleman has been chosen by a very eminent jury to take this award. और सेठिया जी ने जो अपने कलम से लिखा है देश के लिए, प्रदेश के लिए, वो हमारे इतिहास का एक अमिट पन्ना है.
I'm so glad to be standing here. I consider it an honor to be here in memory of Kanhaiyalal Sethia, the Mahakavi of India.
आप सबको, सेठिया परिवार को, अरुंधति जी को कंग्रेचुलेशंस ऑन दिस प्राइज़. मैं बस एक बात कहना चाहती हूँ, मेरा गला ख़राब है, मगर अभी पहले सेशन में कहा कि वी राइटर्स, इवन इफ वी लूज़ आवर वॉइस, वी नेवर लूज़ आवर रियल वॉइस. आवर रियल वॉइस रिमेन्स इन आवर बुक्स and our poetry and in our words. So Sethia ji's poetry has remained, and Arundhati is there to take it forward. Thank you very much.
May I invite Ranjit Hoskote to the podium.
Like Namita, I've lost my voice, but I find it resurgent to see so many people here to celebrate poetry. And it gives me particular pleasure on behalf of the jury to read the citation for Arundhati as she receives the Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia Award for Poetry for this year. Arundhathi Subramaniam is a poet inside out. Words in her poems sing and dance to create uncharted domains of experience, transporting one to spirituality as much as to the throb of material reality. Her poems are imaginative explorations of different truths through skillfully choreographed patterns. The Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia Award 2024 goes to her, deservedly, for her strong cultural rooting expressed so effectively in her poetry, which is written in English. Congratulations, Arundhati.
We will now show another short audio visual.
Poetry today, more than ever, seems to be a shadowy, marginal, inconsequential form. That is how it is perceived by many, and I was acutely aware of that when I started out as a poet. And I have poems as well talking about poetry as this dowdy, non-particularly glamorous, and yet compelling, deeply compelling form that I decided to center my life around. I've often called it the art of the murmured voice. And in the era of the megaphone, there's nothing that seems as out of place as the murmur as inaudible as the murmur. In an era of information technology, the poem becomes an even more befuddling presence because it doesn't give us information in the way that we are accustomed to receiving it. That makes people even more uncomfortable, I find. And there is, of course, the fact that we are all beneficiaries of generations of unimaginative school teachers who have done their best, I believe, very often to kill a very natural, spontaneous love of poetry that many of us have had. For me, it was the realization that poetry is actually a kind of dance. It is, in fact, language that is mercurial, kinetic, unpredictable, startling.
May I now invite guest of honor Lily Pandey to say a few words and facilitate the Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal awardee Arundhathi Subramaniam.
Namaste, my dear friends and colleagues, and the very glorious August jury members, as well as the poet who's to be felicitated today, the family members of Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia. I'm extremely delighted and very, very honored to be here. Poetry, it is said, is the crown of literature, and the poets are the sense, the philosophy, and the intelligence of humanity. About the Mahakavi Kanhaiyalal Sethia ji, he was the very soul of Rajasthan. So I'm extremely honored to be giving away this prestigious award to Arundhathi Subramaniam, who is one of the finest poets today, writing in English in India. Congratulations, and may I have the honor of presenting you this award.
Sukrita Paul and Ranjit Hoskote presenting the citation. Namita Gokhale will now present Arundhathi Subramaniam with a shawl. And Jaiprakash Sethia will present Arundhathi Subramaniam with a check.
Everybody thinks that poets can write and they don't need any resources. It's very important for any award today, especially for writing, to be accompanied by a check, and the Sethia Foundation presents a check of 100,000 rupees every year to the poets. So thank you so much for making that happen. I also like to take a moment to acknowledge Lily Pandey, Joint Secretary Culture. She's one of the few people who, when she was talking about how to plan for the culture track at the G20, which she headed, one of her first initiatives was to say, why can't we release an anthology of poetry? And therefore, we're very honored to have her here today. She had asked Ranjit Hoskote to edit that anthology, a collection of poets from across the G20 countries, which he then released more recently at the IIC. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a great champion of the arts and culture, despite the difficulties that we know in within the policy space. We greatly appreciate your energy in doing so. Kat, back to you.
I now invite to the podium Arundhathi Subramaniam to say a few words and recite her poems. Please, Arundhathi.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for making this moment happen. I seem to have said it before in the video that was screened. I seem to have said before that poetry is the art of the murmured voice, and I'm reminded of that today. The thing about poetry is that it is hugely pleasurable to practice, but it can also get very quiet. And in that quiet, when an award like this comes along, particularly an award in the memory of a very significant Indian poet, it means a great deal. I think it was Hardy who once said that if Galileo had said that the earth goes around the sun in verse, the Inquisition would have left him alone. And I think we've all in some way known the truth of that. In many ways, it feels like poetry doesn't count, and yet, those of us who've been touched and transformed by it know how deeply it can, in fact, produce fault lines, shifts in internal fault lines that last forever. So thank you. I feel very honored, and the fact that this is an award in the memory of someone who was not just a man of creativity and integrity, but a man who loved freedom, personal and collective, matters even more. Poetry in many ways is language that yearns for freedom. It's language that's constantly aching to leap off a page. That's the kind of freedom it yearns for. It will refuse to settle for the languages of propaganda of any kind, political, commercial, religious. And it is that freedom that I think we are all here to celebrate. I'd like to read 3 poems and begin with a poem that I wrote in my most recent book called Mitti, which, as you all know, means soil. And it began as a reflection on soil and moved into a reflection on language and culture and belonging. Mitti. As a child, I ate mud. It tasted of grit and peat and wild churning, and something else that I could never quite find a name for. Later, I became a moon gazer, always squinting through windows, believing that freedom was aerial, until I figured that the moon was a likely mud gazer, longing for the thick sludge of gravity, the promiscuous thrill of touch, the license to make, break, remake. And so I uncovered the old language of poets, to be messengers between moon and mud. And I began to uncover the many languages of earth that have nothing to do with nations and atlases, and everything to do with the ways of earwigs, the pilgrim trail of roots, the great longing of life to hold and be held, and the irrepressible human love of naming. Ooze, maya, manure, humus, dirt, silt, mold, loam, soil, slush, clay, shit, mann, mattope, baro, tinen, ni, luto, fango, all have their place, I found, in the democracy of tongues. None superior, none untranslatable, all reminders of the anthem of muck of which we are made. Except when June clouds capsize over an Arabian sea and a sleeping city awakens to an ache so singular that for just a moment it could have no name, other than that where sound meets sense and a slop of matter meets a slick lunatic wetness, mitti. Just that. Nothing else will do. Maybe it's because I live in a subcontinent that's always being reminded of its ancient history. There have been times when I've wanted a sense of belonging that isn't weighed, encumbered by the cargo of the past. Home. Give me a home that isn't mine, where I can slip in and out of rooms without a trace, never worrying about the plumbing, the color of the curtains, the cacophony of books by the bedside. A home that I can wear lightly, where the rooms aren't clogged with yesterday's conversations, where the self doesn't bloat to fill in the crevices. A home like this body, so alien when I try to belong, so hospitable when I decide I'm just visiting. And the last poem that I'd like to read is the title poem of my book, which Dushyant very kindly read the translation of. It's a poem called When God is a Traveler. Wondering about Kartikeya, Muruga, Subramanya, my namesake. It's about a God whom we, as we all know, goes off on a journey around the world and returns many years and many adventures later to find that the answers are to be found within. And in that, of course, he makes a journey that so many heroes in stories all over the world have made. It felt appropriate that I shared his name. When God is a Traveler. Trust the God back from his travels, his voice whole grain and chamomile, his wisdom neem, his peacock sweaty plumed, drowsing in the shadows. Trust him who sits wordless on park benches, listening to the cries of children fading into the dusk, his gaze emptied of vagrancy, his heart of ownership. Trust him who has seen enough. Revolutions, promises, the desperate light of shopping malls, hospital rooms, manifestos, theologies, the iron taste of blood, the great craters in the middle of love. Trust him who no longer begrudges his brother his prize, his parents their partisanship. Trust him whose race is run, whose journey remains, who stands fluid-stemmed, knowing he is the tree that bears fruit, festive with sun. Trust him who recognizes you, abundant, auspicious, battle-scarred, alive, and knows from where you come. Trust the God ready to circle the world all over again, this time for no reason at all other than to see it through your eyes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arundhathi Subramaniam, and thank you, Dr. Dushyant, for that wonderful translation. When the award was decided a few days ago, we reached out to Vidya Shah and asked if she thought she could take one of the poems that Dr. Dushyant had translated, Arundhathi had written, and put it to music in the classical tradition. Needless to say that because it's not written in the format of a rag, that's not the easiest thing, and we were concerned that maybe Vidya would say no. Vidya being Vidya, always happy for a challenge, was like, "Are kyun nahi? Of course I'll do it. Don't worry. This is the one that I've chosen. No problem." Ladies and gentlemen, विद्या शाह।
Congratulations, Arundhathi. And I've had the opportunity to work with you before when we did something together at the London JLF, and I think we sort of instantly creatively connected. So when this lovely felicitation was happening, I couldn't say no. And Sanjoy is absolutely right. मुश्किल है चीज़, बहुत खूबसूरत है, लेकिन पता नहीं कितनी गेय है, फिर भी I'm going to give it a shot. And it is a poem titled Home, the one which you also read, and I'm going to attempt a musical interpretation of the Hindi translation. हाँ, मुझे दे दो एक घर, मुझे दे दो, मुझे दे दो एक घर जहाँ मेरा नहीं, जो मेरा नहीं, मुझे दे दो एक घर जो मेरा नहीं, जहाँ कमरों के बीच आती जाती रहूं, जहाँ कमरों के बीच आती जाती रहूं, मुझे दे दो एक घर जहाँ कमरों के बीच आती जाती रहूं, बिना छोड़े निशान, बिना छोड़े निशान, जहाँ कभी भी चिंता न हो, जहाँ कभी भी चिंता न हो प्लम्बिंग की न पर्दों के रंगों की, हाँ बिस्तर के बगल के किताबों के कोलाहल की भी नहीं, हाँ प्लम्बिंग की न पर्दों के रंगों की, बिस्तर के बगल की किताबों के कोलाहल की भी नहीं, मुझे दे दो एक घर, एक घर जिसे पहन सकूं, एक घर जिसे पहन सकूं, हल्के से हल्के से, जहाँ कमरे बीते हुए कल की बातचीत से मैले न हो, हाँ जहाँ कभी चिंता न हो प्लम्बिंग की न पर्दों के रंगों की, बिस्तर के बगल की किताबों के कोलाहल की भी नहीं, हाँ मुझे दे दो एक घर जो मेरा नहीं, एक घर देह की तरह बिल्कुल अजनबी जब मैं चाहूं, संबद्धता बाहें फैलाए जब मैं तय करूं, जब मैं तय करूं, हाँ जब मैं तय करूं कि मैं मेहमान हूँ। Thank you.
Vidya.